Greetings, I'm Laura Puccia Valtorta. Here in September in South Carolina, it's still very hot. Marco and I just got through having COVID, and that was not fun. I'm a content creator, and my movies include Bermuda, a comedy feature, and Disaster Man, plus the wonderful The Disease Detective Looks at Aphasia. All of these are available on Amazon and Tubi. A big shout out to our listeners in Japan, Germany, and Texas. Dear listener, welcome to a new episode of my podcast, B is for Bisexual, entitled Goombah Table, Bad Dreams. I thought we'd get a bit more realistic this time with the magical realism style. As always, my family is helping me read the story. Here today are my son Dante.
Ciao a tutti.
And my husband Marco.
Buongiorno.
After we read the story, I'll tell you about what's happening with me in this exciting month of September. And now, Goombah Table, Bad Dreams. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Carmen walked into the Blend Cafe in Prosperity, South Carolina, sizzling with anger after losing her latest disability case in court. Social Security judges were morons, especially when it came to the welfare of the people around them. They allowed the disease of inequality to spread, and what infected one infected the entire world. Carmen was a witness, watching age-old myths about skin color and gender dominate people's shaping of a stepladder world, doomed to float stupid, undeserving men to the top. Her Goombah lunch friends were no exception. Harry, Alberto, and Cecil were laughing and chatting about something. She prayed it wasn't sports. Were they laughing at her? She slung her briefcase into a chair.
Well, hey, Carmen,
said Cecil.
You're looking good in the neighborhood.
The men looked at her expectantly, waiting for a caustic reply. She knew she looked horrible, tired, and angry at the world. Her shoes were stretched and cracked, and her sleeves too narrow. Her suit was mismatched, yellow jacket with black pants, because she couldn't find two pieces that went together. There was a coffee stain on her lapel. At least her hair was electric. Eat shit, said Carmen, lowering herself into a chair. I've had a terrible morning, and I'm not ready for your stinky sarcasm.
But Carmen,
said Harry.
We love you.
The men broke into a raucous laugh.
You know we find you beautiful and irresistible.
Harry was a gay man who taught economics at the local university. Carmen figured that he used her as an example of why sometimes men were gay, because they found women to be less than human. At least the judges don't make fun of me, said Carmen, who is the state's top disability attorney and a writer of thinly disguised stage plays attacking local readers.
It is true that Carmen is good, very good at what she does,
said Alberto. Carmen's husband was a computer scientist.
Lucky for her,
said Harry.
She's never had to rely on her looks.
Harry, retired military, was wearing a pompadour and a linen suit. He always dressed carefully. This didn't stop him from being fugly with rumpled skin and beard stubble. The men exploded in laughter so loudly that the other Goombah tables today, the local insurance agent, along with Big Susan, their token woman, and the crocheters, including Potato Fred, turned around to stare at them. The Blend was a quiet lunch spot, painted in white and powder blue. Carmen wondered if the Goombah table might get kicked out. Shut up, fools, said Carmen, and let me order something to eat. After ordering an egg salad sandwich and a croissant from Bobby, the wife of Cecil, with chips on the side, Carmen sat down to sip her plain iced tea and decide what to do. After a moment, she returned to the cashier and ordered an espresso in a tiny cup with a saucer. She grabbed the bitter coffee and downed it down. The problem with the patriarchy was its stepladder system. Somebody farted their way to the top and kicked the people at the bottom with their stinky feet. In the end, everybody in the world was equally horrible. On the ground altogether, they would have more room to maneuver and get some real work done. Carmen needed to knock these men off the stepladder. In her purse, she had a bottle of dream juice made from honey and wasp venom. Pour some in a dish, light it up, and anyone who smelled it would fall into a dreamlike daze for about 5 minutes, philosophizing about the world, like they would if they had paid attention in class during a liberal arts education. A world philosophy reduced to 5 minutes. The goal was to get them to realize, among other things, that women are human beings. Also, competition strengthens you. Don't kill the competition. Carmen wondered if these men were intelligent enough to learn. The men were talking about football, the American kind. Even though Alberto, her husband, was from Italy and only really interested in soccer and Formula One racing, he fell prey to the toxic brotherhood of American football. Carmen took out the jug of dream juice and poured some into the tiny saucer left over from her espresso. She placed it in the center of the table. Then she took out a cheap lighter and lit the liquid. The men stopped talking about Peyton.
What's that?
Said Cecil. His wife owned the blend. He was probably worried about fires. It's something to make you feel good, said Carmen.
Feel good? I need to feel good right now.
Harry blew out the flame, spooned some of the hot liquid into his coffee. Before Carmen could stop him, he drank the coffee. Do-do-do-do! Harry, who banked his life on keeping secrets by walking forcefully and holding his head together, suddenly felt his face turn to jelly. Although it was 2024, the feeling of restrictive dread tightened in his chest was from 1955, when a horrible straight man was president and gay sex was illegal. He looked around at the laughing donkeys sitting at his own table. At the next table, the crocheters, minus Potato Head, were wearing bouffant hairstyles all of a sudden and flower print dresses. The insurance men, including Big Susan, had grease on their hair and shoes with tassels. Everyone was sneering at him.
I'm gay, but I can't tell anyone.
He whispered, terrified. Carmen petted his arm. Keep your voice down, she said. We all know you're gay. We're your friends. It's just a nightmare. You drank that coffee with wasp juice in it. Harry reached for his shoulder bag. His cell phone, his talisman, was gone. Alberto and Cecil were looking at him suspiciously. It's a bad dream, said Carmen. I'm trying to teach you a lesson about feminism. It's not just gays who need rights. We all feel betrayed by the world. Harry bit into his egg salad sandwich, but it was bland and needed pepper. He looked around. The horrible crochet women had the pepper. They looked like alligators. Harry walked unsteadily to their table to try and get the pepper, but one of the younger women with horrible dyed blonde hair moved the pepper away from him. Harry lunged for the pepper shaker. 3 security guards wearing vests that said "One Nation Under God" burst into the cafe. Their guns were pointed at Harry. He looked at Carmen for help, but she just shrugged. You messed up. You need to invite me to New York City, said Carmen, to a Broadway show and a gay bar. Just don't hog all the coolness for yourself.
I will,
shouted Harry.
I invite you to go with me next month.
The policeman backed out the door, and the room swished back to normal. Now the crocheters were wearing shorts and T-shirts again. Potato Fred was back. The insurance men no longer had grease on their hair. Big Susan was straddling her chair as usual.
Phew,
said Harry. Drink this plain iced tea, said Carmen. Harry gulped it down. Alberto was pouting.
You can't go to New York City without me,
he said, his arms crossed over his chest. Come along with us then, said Carmen. Wear your Italian leather jacket. Do-do-do-do.
No. Anch'io.
Said Alberto.
I want to drink some of that.
Italians always like to experiment with food. Carmen shrugged and passed him the saucer of spiked honey. He put a teaspoonful of dream juice into his iced tea and stirred it. He drank it. All of a sudden, Carmen and Harry were conspiring against him. He just knew it. He would be alone, left all alone. He'd gone back in time, growing up as an only child, coddled by his parents, but worrying. What would happen when they died? He needed to be married. He needed kids and cousins, co-workers. Carmen and Harry were dressed to go away, rolling their suitcases, walking out on him. He hurried to pack his suitcase, hurried to catch up. But they were so fast, so far ahead of him. He would never get out of his pajamas and join them. He would never be fast enough or sarcastic enough.
See you later, alligator,
said Harry. I left you some leftovers in the refrigerator, said Carmen, smiling. They went out the door, escaping into Harry's Kia Soul. The other diners, the insurance salesman and the crocheters, started leaving also, melting into the walls.
Venite qui!
Shouted Alberto.
Come back!
Alberto looked out the door for some signs of life, but the small town of prosperity had disappeared. In its place was a vast desert of corn, waving in the wind. As a city boy, he was used to the noisy crowds of Milan. Here he was lost. Where were the pasticcerie, the tigros, people bicycling, motorcycling, and driving to work? This emptiness did not bring him peace. He screamed.
Ah!
He felt Carmen's hand on his arm, which was strange because she had just walked out the door. Everybody's here, said Carmen. That wasp juice is a hallucinogen.
Wow,
said Cecil.
you have a loud voice when you yell. Falsetto.
After furtively glancing around, Carmen lit the saucer of wasp juice again. She knew Cecil, an organic farmer, wouldn't drink anything that crazy, especially after watching his friends grow paranoid, but he did inhale the fumes. After 5 minutes, the usually calm, whitewashed diner began to turn hostile. Some putrid smoke began to arise from the insurance agents. Suddenly, they had multiple eyes. He watched his wife behind the counter grow feelers and 3 body parts and morph into a 6-foot upright fire ant. Solenopsis gigantus, said Carmen. Bobby's helper, Francie, grew long tentacles and wings. She was a large cockroach. The blend started to smell like a garbage dump.
Call the exterminators,
yelled Cecil. He saw large, multi-eyed creatures with skeletons on the outside, grabbing all the sandwich bread and munching it down. Without sandwich bread and croissants, the blend would fail. Bobby would be home all the time. No more bacon for him, much less football. He thought about the crocheters, but they had all turned into giant fireflies. The insurance salesmen were a bunch of aphids.
Oh no, my crops,
said Cecil.
My corn.
Hold steady, said Karma, placing a hand on his arm. You're having a nightmare. Huge lights started blinking on and off. It was the fireflies. Their bottoms were blinking. Their mouths were chomping. Their wings were ready to fly.
Oh, my crops,
shouted Cecil.
My soybeans. It's climate change,
said Harry. Your wife now has mandibles, said Carmen, pointing to the insect formerly known as Bobby, who was eating a piece of cake from inside the display case, her tentacles quivering. Cecil looked up to the sky for inspiration. But now that his wife was a giant bug, all was vinegar and smoke. Do-do-do-do! Carmen felt relieved when her companion's eyes were normal and focused again. Even their sarcasm was better than their terrified faces and moans of fear.
Hey, what was in that stuff?
said Harry. I told you, magic wasp juice. They control the minds of other bugs.
Oh, bugs.
Cecil shuddered. Do you like things the way they are? Said Carmen.
See?
Alberto groaned. Do you want to go back to the past, obliterated like the dinosaurs?
No!
The men shouted. Then let's work together, said Carmen. We need everybody's brains helping out to save the earth. The four friends stood up right in front of everybody at the blend for a giant hug in the middle of the cafe. Doo-doo-doo-doo. That's the end, dear listener. This month in South Carolina will be filled with adventure. Next week, I'm going to visit my wonderful daughter, Clara, her husband, Ross, and my important granddaughter, Joya. The week after that, the wonderful Lynn, the fantastic Dante, the wonderful Steve, and I will be traveling to Maryland to film a short documentary about water issues. For now, until the 1st of next month, ciao.
Ciao!
Ciao a tutti.